Okay, we're continuing with the quote book here, The Holy Grail of Wisdom Quotes by me, P. Rogers, alphabetical order. Douglas MacArthur, the great American military genius of World War II and the Korean War. He also fought in World War I. His father was a Medal of Honor winner, and he too was a Medal of Honor winner. He's actually also nominated for it 3 times. He was Supreme Commander in the Pacific Front, fighting the Japanese in World War II. The best general out in Europe was Patton, another Scots-Irish guy. Okay, so that's pretty typical. MacArthur's a Scots-Irish guy. They're the best USA soldiers as a group, by far, of any group. Let's see, like I said, his father was a Medal of Honor winner in the Civil War. Douglas MacArthur graduated valedictorian of his high school, first in his class at West Point. And the other thing, too, I try to get across to young people is the United States used to be a macho, tough guy country. Proud, masculine, we're the best. When I was growing up in the 1960s and 70s, people said, USA is the best. It's like, why would you want to learn Spanish? Okay, Spanish is bullshit, okay? Third world. You're in America now. You speak English. And I really wish I would have become fluent in Spanish when I was young. I later on learned it and talked with my mother, but I didn't learn it from birth. And my father kind of discouraged it, which I think was a mistake. By the time we were ready to learn it, we didn't want to. Anyways, getting back to Douglas MacArthur, just a typical thing guys would say in his day. I learned to ride and shoot even before I could read or write. Indeed, almost before I could walk and talk. It was very much like that. We're the toughest. We're the best. Here's a quote about MacArthur by William Manchester. He's a great author. He said, General MacArthur never went to church, but he read the Bible every day. And he regarded himself as one of the world's 2 great defenders of Christendom. The other was the Pope. Yeah, MacArthur would say, I read the Bible every single day. All right. Here's some Douglas MacArthur quotes. I have learned one of the bitter lessons of life. Never try to regain the past. The fire will become ashes. Old soldiers never die. They just fade away. The years wrinkle the skin. Giving up wrinkles the soul. Give me 10,000 Filipino soldiers and I will conquer the world. So he loved the Filipinos and he freed the Philippines from the Japanese. Filipinos, a lot of them I know them are really nice, really smart and good. They're very they're very Christian. It was their Christian religion that saved their country from Marcos the dictator, because Marcos the dictator would tell the soldiers to just fire on the public. And the soldiers said, screw you, man. We're all Catholics. This is our family. Screw you. And Marcos, was out of power for being such an a-hole. Okay, let's continue with Douglas MacArthur. He said, there is no security on this earth. There is only opportunity. Okay, and look at his next quote. To whom much is given, much is expected. My father used to always say that to me. On the one hand, I respected it and agree with it, but on the other hand, it would piss me off. Because I'd be like, no matter what I did, my father would say, like, let's say I was in college, I took third in a tournament. My father would be like, well, why didn't you win? And I'd be like, well, screw you. I'm coming back from an injury. I'm pretty proud of myself for taking third. It's a tough tournament. And that was kind of how it went. No matter what I did, my father would expect more of me. And I was like, well, why don't you give me a little more resources? I needed to take a year off from college. I would have been an All-American. It pissed me off the rest of my life that I wasn't. Okay, Douglas MacArthur continues. It's not whether you get knocked down, it's whether you get up. There is no substitute for victory. Like, he didn't want a stalemate in the Korean War. He wanted to win. There is no substitute for victory. Preparedness is the key to success and victory. Believe me, sir, never a night goes by, be I ever so tired, but I read the Word of God before I go to bed. Duty, honor, country. Those 3 words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, and what you will be. Like he's talking to the guys at West Point. There are no atheists in the foxholes of Bataan. The issues which we today confront the nation are clearly defined, and so fundamental as to directly involve the very survival of the Republic. Are we going to preserve the religious base of our origin, our growth, our progress, or are we going to yield to the devious assaults of atheistic and other anti-religious forces? Are we going to maintain our present course towards state socialism with communism just beyond? You got to remember, this is like back in the 1950s he's saying this, and it's a million times worse now than it was then. He said, or are we going to reverse the present trend and regain our hold upon our heritage of liberty and freedom? Are we going to continue to yield personal liberties and community autonomy to the steady, inexplicable centralization of all political power? Yeah, whenever you hear about centralization, you should understand what that means is empowering tyranny to control you. Okay, centralization is not the friend of the pro. There are some things which perhaps are best centralized. There are a few things, but you don't want everything centralized, because what that means is very few people can control all the large masses. So in general, you should think of centralization as being against freedom. It's usually a bad thing. And also, he says, are we going to restore the republic? America was founded to be a republic. I don't even like the word democracy. I hate that word, because what democracy means in reality is pushing towards mob rule, which then has to be pacified by force, meaning martial law and tyranny. Okay? So when you hear some politico saying they want a democracy, what they're indirectly really saying is they want more centralization of power. Okay? Republic is what the word you want. Okay? In a constitutional direction, MacArthur says here. Liberty comes from limitation of government power. Are we going to permit a continuing decline in public and private morality? Or are we going to reestablish high ethical standards as a means of regaining a diminishing faith in the integrity of our public and private institutions? It's a simple fact. You can't have good institutions if you don't have Christian ethics. Now, you could fuss with that all you want, but I've worked in these institutions for many, many years. I'm very familiar with numerous different institutions, okay? And I can tell you, conventional medicine, it cannot be fixed. It's impossible to fix conventional medicine. It is impossible to fix the public school system. It is impossible to fix the university system. It is impossible to fix any large-scale system without Christian ethics, for a simple reason. Christian ethics says you must do right by the individual person. They should be your highest priority. And like Christ had said, this is what I ask you, to love one another as I have loved you. And unless you have that, there's always more money from being a liar and a cheater and selling out to big business, selling out to corporations, selling out to big pharma, selling out to big food. And that's why nothing will ever be top-notch unless you have that. And you can whine and bitch all you want, but that's a fact. You can't have good science. And you say, oh, we don't need God to have science. Actually, you do. Because if you don't have Christian ethics, what ends up happening is there's always a lot more money for doing what's morally wrong. Okay? If you try to make a drug to make money and distort the results, you can make $1 billion. Okay? If you tell the truth, that nutrition is the best, low-fat vegan is the best cure for coronary artery disease, diabetes, hypertension. You don't make any money with that, and you piss off the people who are making money selling drugs. So you'll actually get people mad at you, get your funding taken away. So you have to basically say, I'm here on this planet as a Christian to do what's right, the best I can. As I see it, I answer to Jesus Christ. No man is above Jesus Christ in my life. That's what it takes. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not going to have top-notch institutions. You're going to have endless BS, basically whatever the billionaires want. They've got the power. Somebody with big money is the power to make other people do stuff. Okay, so the super, super, super rich, they've got the power to make everybody do stuff. And they always want atheism because that says that they are the equivalent of God, that basically they have complete say over what people do. So they're never going to want religion. That's why it has to come from below, that people insist on it. That's it. And that's just how it goes. There is no alternative. There's no plan B. There's no I'm giving you A and B. It's either tyrannical atheism, A for atheism, or it's going to be B for Christian ethics, or it's going to be progression into tyranny and slavery. If you think there's an alternative, I don't think you study history. I've studied tons of history. And to me, this is obvious. Everybody who's really studied a lot knows. And this guy, MacArthur's a genius. He knows it too. It's obvious, okay? There's no way around this. He says, liberty comes from limitation of government power. All right, he says, let's continue. I've got to move down to where he was. In short, is American life of the future to be characterized by freedom or by servitude? By strength or by weakness? The answer must be clear and definite if we are to avoid the pitfalls towards which we are now heading. Yeah, it must be clear and definite. What I've seen is a lot of people are kind of like lightweight intellectuals, and they're like, well, maybe fluoride in the water is good for our teeth. No, it's freaking rat poison to make you docile and stupid. There's nothing ambiguous about that. And if you can't like lock onto something like that, then I'm sorry, you don't have much intellectual ability. Okay, you have to get these things. If somebody puts fluoride in your water, that means they don't like you. Okay, read the chemistry of it. It's obvious. It's rat poison, lowers IQ, lowers fertility, lowers testosterone, increases cancer rate. It's harmful in numerous ways. Okay, all right. Somebody puts aluminum. It's a neurotoxin into your water. That means they don't like you. You go, oh, all the dummies will go, well, maybe they really want it as a clarifying agent. Yes, it's a mild clarifying agent, but that doesn't cancel out the fact that it's a neurotoxin, a major neurotoxin. Okay. Anyways, I'm just saying these things because it's kind of sad, because America doesn't have to become a third world country, but the billionaires want it to be a third world country, and they've got power. And then, some, pro like me can make a couple videos and get 100 views, so I don't have, any significant influence, but I understand the issue quite well, and there's nothing ambiguous about it. Okay, continuing with Douglas MacArthur. In many respects, the answer is not to be found in any dogma of political philosophy, but in those immutable precepts of the Ten Commandments. The problem is now theological. That is correct. The problem is now theological, and it involves improvement of human character. It must be of the spirit if we are to save the flesh. History fails to record a single precedent in which nations subject to moral decay have not passed into political and economic decline. There has either been a spiritual awakening to overcome the moral lapse or a progressive deterioration leading to ultimate national disaster. And that's where we are right now. We're in a national disaster, and we're hoping that the USA will recover. It certainly could. The great history of the Western tradition, like right behind me here at the School of Athens, it's not gone. There's nothing that can compete with it. These guys on this hand side, left, they've got nothing. They've got nothing. What do they have to compete with the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, the Carolingian Renaissance, the Merovingian Renaissance, the Italian Renaissance, the Scholasticism Renaissance, the Victorian Renaissance, the Catholic Revival, all of these other great things? They've got nothing. Drag queen story hour. That's it. They've got nothing because their goal is destruction, not to build anything good. So anyways, hopefully enough people realize that we can keep some freedom in this country and some, aesthetic creativity and, things like private property, things like prosperity, things like free speech. Okay, continuing with Douglas MacArthur. Wars are caused by undefended wealth. That's a good one. Wars are caused by undefended wealth. So basically, there's always two countries living next to each other, and then one country's more powerful. And if the country next to it doesn't have allies and it can't defend itself, then they pretty routinely say, oh, this guy's a homicidal maniac. We have to preemptively go in there. And what they really want to do is steal all his stuff. Okay? And so that's also, I think, like what women don't understand about third world countries. You can walk down the street in a prosperous country like the United States in a nice neighborhood. Nobody's going to bother you. Nobody's going to even speak to you. You walk down the street in one of these places where there's tons of third world men sitting around in the street homeless, you're not going to be able to walk down that street. And you can wiggle your nose, you can talk about feminism all you want, but you're basically undefended wealth. You have something the men want, and you have no ability to defend it. Okay, so that's why you want noble masculinity, because noble masculinity protects society, protects the women, and protects everything. Okay, wars are caused by undefended wealth. That one comes up all the time. All right, so next one. A true leader has to have the confidence to stand alone, the courage to make tough decisions, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. He does not set out to be a leader, but he becomes one by fairness of his actions and his intent. You are remembered for the rules you break. I like that one. You are remembered for the rules you break. Yeah, everybody tells you to be conformist, but if you don't do anything nonconformist, then you don't do anything memorable. Okay, you get punished for it, like Ralph Waldo Emerson said, for nonconformity, the world whips you with its displeasure. But it's also the only way to achieve anything. Funny, we were talking about the AI taking over some of the videos on the internet. And what I said is it'll be easy to replace the high-fat phonies. They're just, spouting generic BS. But somebody like me, they won't want to replace my videos. They go, we're not going to delete that guy's videos. We're not going to replace that guy's videos with AI. We're just going to delete them. Anyways. Yeah, and if you don't want, if you're worried, that I might get deleted from YouTube, who knows if I do, I would tell you, send me an email. You can send it to rogersmd at protonmail.com. Then I'll have your email. So if I have to go to other video sites, I'll let you know where I'm at. Okay, continuing with Douglas MacArthur. You are remembered for the rules you break. He said, I am concerned for the security of our great nation, not so much because of any threat from without, but because of the insidious forces working from within. No man is entitled to the blessings of freedom unless he is vigilant in its preservation. The history of failure in war can be summed up in 2 words. Too late. Yeah, sort of like now's a chance that America could be made free. We're sort of at a tipping point, and I hope America stays free. I'd like it to be free. I'd like to be able to have free speech. I would like to be able to have some private property. I don't want to be in a 15-minute you-know-what so-called city. Douglas MacArthur says, I shall return, like to the Philippines. Anyways, that was Douglas MacArthur. Great man, military genius, Scots-Irish. I hope you found that helpful.